Welcome to Living in the Miracle Zone. This is the place to be if you want to live in the flow of synchronicities and miracles in your everyday life. I'm your host, Marci Shimoff, and I'm a #1 New York Times bestselling author, teacher in The Secret, and the creator of the worldwide program, Your Year of Miracles. And I have spent my life studying happiness and miracles. And in this podcast, we bring to you extraordinary miracle stories that will inspire you and groundbreaking miracle tools that will show you how you can live your most miraculous life. And it is my heartfelt intention that we have a fabulous time together. So welcome to the Miracle Zone. And today I am joined by my dear friend, the amazing Arielle Ford. Welcome, Arielle.
Thanks, Marci. I'm super excited to be with you.
It's always great to get to be with you, Arielle. And so let me just share with everyone a little bit about your fabulous background. Arielle is famous as the book publicist who launched some of the world's top self-help and spiritual authors. And she went on to write 11 nonfiction books of her own. She is a celebrated love and relationship expert and a speaker and a coach. And her books include the Hot Chocolate for the Mystical Soul series, the bestsellers, The Soulmate Secret and Wabi, Sabi, Love. And now Arielle has ventured into writing her first novel, The Love Thief. So welcome, Arielle, to this our conversation on the Love Thief. You know, before I start speaking with you about living in the Miracle Zone and the Love Thief, I really want to share with people the you that I know. Because Arielle, I met in 1996. She was my publicist. She was the publicist for the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and she was the publicist to everybody, you know, Deepak and Marianne Williamson and Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay and on and on and on. And that's how I got to know you. And I'm grateful to you for having helped me in the book world. It was my first book, and thanks to you, we went to #1 on the New York Times list right away. So you were an extraordinary publicist. But I want to thank you even more for what you have been for me personally and as a friend and as an advisor to my relationship. You have been the person, along with our mutual friend, Claire Zammit, who has really told me, Sergio is the one. You stick with him and here's what you need to do. And you have showed me all along the way what I needed to learn so that I could have more of a miraculous relationship. So I really deeply thank you for being responsible for Sergio.
Marci, you're such a compliant student most of the time, so it's not all that hard. And you're the hardest working person I know. I mean, getting you out there doing PR was a pleasure because your answer to everything was yes. Even if it meant getting up at 3 a.m. to do coast to coast, you would do it, you know?
Well, I will do what you tell me because I know that what you tell me is always right. This is, you know, you're called the Cupid of Consciousness. And I know why you really have been that for me. So let's just talk a little bit first about how it is you have come to live a miraculous life. Because back in those days when you and I first met, I would think it was safe to say that neither of us was really living a miraculous life. We were living successful lives, but not necessarily miraculous. So how have you come to live a miraculous life?
I committed myself to being a student of love when I met Brian, which was in 1997. You know, because I discovered that I was an excellent manifester. I have been since September 12th, 1984 was when I learned the basic essentials of manifesting. But after I manifested my soulmate, I quickly discovered I had zero partnership skills. I had no idea what to do with this soulmate, except that there was a really good chance I was going to blow it. So that put me onto a whole new path of really being personally responsible for not just my happiness, but for how the relationship was going to go. Because I knew that I knew nothing. The thing that I excelled at in those days was being the boss. I could run a business. But being the boss with an alpha male, doesn't work. and I didn't know how else to be. So it was a huge commitment. It was not fun most of the time. It's not easy because I had to open up parts of my brain and my heart that were pretty much in lockdown. So I would say leading a miraculous life was a commitment and still is a commitment. And every single day I whip out my spiritual toolkit and I use it every single day. In fact, Brian and I were at the airport yesterday and I was busy tapping away on this big annoyance that I had. And I had to start by saying, I'm going to be tapping and it's not about you.
And you know what, Arielle, I so love that it's a commitment every day and it's something that you do and you use your spiritual tools. And I for those of you who don't know tapping, what Arielle is referring to is EFT, emotional freedom technique. It's a fabulous tool to help release, move through emotions that are where we feel stuck or upset. And so that to me is such a secret to, it's not really a secret. It's the key to living a miraculous life is to actually making a commitment to it and using the tools every day. And
yeah, the analogy I like to use is, let's say you decided you wanted to become a runner and you wanted to run a 10K. There's no way that you realize you're going to be able to complete the 10K unless you get up every day, put on your sneakers and go out and start running. Even if the first week you're doing a block and the second week you're doing 4 blocks, we understand that kind of commitment, but having a miraculous life requires a bigger commitment than that because it's really an hour-to-hour emotional management scene,
Yes.
Because it's so easy to go into spiraling down, oh, this is too hard, or I don't want to, or it's not going to work. And if you're not managing your thoughts and emotions, then you're manifesting all the negativity that's going on in your head. Like my favorite line out there is from Wayne Dyer, where he says, don't believe every thought that you have.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Actually, that's one of my chapters in Happy for No Reason is don't believe everything you think. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean that it's true. And, you also mentioned something about how you became a fabulous manifester in 1984 when you understood the laws of manifestation. And just because you can manifest doesn't mean that you're going to have a miraculous life. I think that people get that confused. Oh, I'm going to manifest this and then I'll have a miraculous life. That's not the way it works. It's really about having a commitment to love, to experiencing love, whether you're in relationship with a primary partner or just in relationship with life. It's really that.
I really feel like during the pandemic, when we were in lockdown for so long, I actually got to a deeper understanding of manifestation than I've ever had before, because I could dream up something. Oh, wouldn't it be lovely if I had XYZ? And then, of course, I would get it. And then I wouldn't be happy or satisfied. Right. Or I would experience discontent. And so while we were in lockdown and I had all this space and all this time, I started looking at the most miraculous things that ever happened in my life, the biggest, most amazing stuff. And I realized I hadn't manifested any of it. What had happened was that I got so down in the bottom of the pit. My life so sucked that I completely surrendered and just gave it up to God and said, okay, I am lost. I don't know what to do. I don't think I can suffer anymore. So I promise you just show me, give me a sign, give me a baby step. And I don't have to know where it's going, but I'll take the baby step. And every time I surrendered at the deepest level, that's when the biggest, most unbelievable miracles happened.
And that is huge. That it's not necessarily going for what is it that I want? What is it that I want? Or I think I want. My small self, my ego self thinks it wants. It's how do I surrender to life? And Arielle, one of the things that's so impressed me about how you've lived is that you have listened to, you've lived, I think, a lot in alignment with what it is life is bringing to you. Is specifically in your career where you have let go of jobs that you've had, of positions that you've had that were fabulous, that were very successful, but then you moved on to something else because it felt more right. And I think that was a surrender to what life was asking of you. And I want to know where you got the courage to do that. I mean, you let go of the PR world when it was over for you. You just said, I'm done with that, even though you were at the top of the game. And you said, I'm going to write books. And then you wrote the nonfiction books, and then surrendered and wrote fiction.
Well, it was a couple of things. One is I felt like I felt like I didn't have any choice. Mm-hmm. You know, like on the day that I saw that it was time to give up my PR firm, which I was like the number one in the world at what I did at that time. It happened because Brian was observing me. I was on the phone with a new client. We were having the Oprah conversation, which I had with all my clients, which was basically, there's a pretty good chance I'm not going to get you on Oprah. Yeah. You know, she doesn't do business books. You're a business author, you know, and I won't engage with you unless you tell me you understand. Okay. They always say, of course I understand. And then at the end of the day, it was like, but you didn't get me on Oprah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and I was shaking and I hadn't signed with this woman yet. And Brian said, do you know that you're shaking? And I was like, oh my God, I'm shaking. And I explained to him what happened. And he said, if you keep doing this, it's going to kill you. You need to stop. And that weekend, we shut the business down. Just no plan, just overnight, because I had a partner who basically said, we don't have to know today what's going to be next. Because I didn't just put myself out of business. I put him out of business. We had a literary agency and the business was authors, and we decided no more authors. So it was this huge leap. And, you know, I just basically realized, do I want to make myself sick? Which if I keep doing this, I'm going to get sick. Or do I want to be courageous and just hope for the best? And thank God I did that. You know, I'm so grateful that I did it. And was it terrifying? Yes, it was terrifying. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
And I've seen that with so many people. When it's really time for people to make a shift, the people that listen and have that trust, that faith, that courage that it's going to work out, and they take that leap. Now, not always, you know, sometimes it's not the right time to take the leap. If you're supporting a family, you take the leap a little differently. But what I've seen is when people have had the courage to step into what's the right next, it brings them beyond what they could have hoped for. And, you know, that's really,
that's one of the big misunderstood principles of manifestation is making space, right? You can't put two cars into one parking space. You've got to like open up the parking space. You've got to make the space. You have to step into the unknown. And, you know, for me, one of the hardest parts about life is to be with not knowing. To not know how it's all going to happen. Because I'm a control freak. I want to know it's all going to be okay. You know, and of course I now understand that I'm not supposed to know that. You know, so I have to tow the old car out and leave the space empty to see what kind of car pulls up next. You know, but it's not easy. But it's worth it.
And I, like you, I have tended to be a control freak also. And I get that nature abhors a vacuum. And every time I've let go of what's not right for me, what's right for me shows up. And by the way, I have to mention Brian, your amazing husband. And I just, you know, we knew each other for a year. We were these both single women that would be talking on the phone about what the next what the next interview was for me. And we'd be commiserating about not having our husbands, our soulmates. And when Brian came in, man, he had me at hello. Your husband is one of the saints on the planet. I love him. He is a walking embodiment of what I talk about when I talk about love for no reason. And you really did do it. And I love that he comes from the place where he supports you in living in surrender and trust and faith and living really in the miracle zone, because I think we help each other. That's what we're on the planet for. That's what a soulmate is, a helpmate. And so your latest venture was, and this was just a total calling of your heart, I know, was this fabulous novel. You'd never written a novel. You'd written 11 best-selling books, and now you write The Love Thief. which is amazing. And I want to talk about it. So tell me why you wrote The Love Thief.
Well, writing a novel was never on my to-do list. And it all started because one day Brian walked into my office and he said to me, "You should write a book about me. And the book should be called I Married an Alien." And I just said, that is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I said, I'm not going to, Keith thinks he's an alien, and he might be, but it's fine, you know? But anyway, he left. I don't know if he was kidding or not. But when he left, I started thinking, well, if I were to write a book about Brian, what would it be about? And I thought, well, it would have to be about his personality, you know, because I call him my love chakra on legs. You know, his purpose in life is to make sure that everyone he comes in contact with has the experience of being loved.
And he does it very successfully.
Yes.
You always feel loved in his presence.
And so that was as far as I got. But the next day, the title came to me, the original title. The original title of the book was The Love Walla. And in India and Asia, Walla is somebody who's the best at what they do. And for a lot of reasons we don't have time to go into, it's not the final title, but I fell in love with the title. It's like, oh, yeah, Brian's a love walla. We even have a vanity plate on our car that says the love walla on it. And then the other thing that started to happen was I started to see this movie in my head of what the book was about. And it was interesting, but I kept saying, go away. I don't want to do this. And I could see that the book takes place in Rishikesh, India. And I like Rishikesh. I've been there many times, but I don't know enough about it to write. So then I started thinking, well, if I'm going to write this book and it takes place in Rishikesh, I need to go back to India to do research. However, a business class ticket is $7,000, and I'm way too tall to sit and coach for 21 hours. So I said to God, I said, okay, God, here's where the miracle was. I said, God, if I'm supposed to write this book, I need to manifest a business class ticket to India. And 2 days later, I had the ticket in my hand. So that's where the miracle started, you know, and that's when I knew I was meant to write this book that I didn't want to write. And all along the way, crazy stuff was happening, you know, and it even though it took me 4.5 years to write it, the actual story was easy. The actual putting the story into fiction at a high level was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. I'm not sure I could ever do it again.
And if you just give us a little synopsis description of the book.
So the book is a romantic spiritual thriller, and it has a very juicy revenge subplot and a big, surprising, happy ending. It's about a 38-year-old woman who her entire life has been looking for the one, and she wants the white picket fence and the 2 kids and a dog, and it keeps evading her until one night under a firework-filled sky, she meets him, and they fall madly in love, and it's everything she ever hoped for until it isn't. Turns out he's a sociopathic, toxic narcissist, and he breaks her heart, crushes her dreams, but eventually karma intervenes and she gets the best revenge without having to kill him.
It's such a great read. I was just recently walking on a beach, and there was a woman there that was reading the book, and I said, "Oh, how are you liking this?" She said, "I read a novel a week. I'm an avid fan, and this is fabulous." She was only about halfway in, and I said, "Well, my friend wrote that." So it was really fun. It's such a wonderful read. So you told me that you had a lot of miracles that happened in the process of writing the book, you know, including the one you just said about the first class ticket showing up as a sign. Could you share with us one of the other miracle stories that happened?
Yeah, one of the crazy things. So I told you the book was unfolding like a movie in my head.
Yeah.
And when I got to Rishikesh, I started to trip over all the things I was seeing in my head. So in the movie in my head, I saw that a lot of the action takes place in a spiritual bookstore. And I had pictures in my head of what it looked like. And my second day in Rishikesh, I walked into a bookstore and it was exactly like the one in my movie. The man standing behind the counter, who is sort of the love walla, the hero of the book, looked exactly like the man in my movie. And then later that day, I went into the center of town of Rishikesh, and I had this thought, oh, I'd really like to have one of those blessings where they put a red string around your wrist. And I turned around and there was a man dressed as Hanuman, the monkey god. And he walked over to me and he said, Madam, may I give you a blessing? So stuff like that kept happening. There was another time I was sitting in my hotel room and I was suddenly really hungry and I was craving, and I'm not a vegetarian, but I was craving vegetables. And our mutual friend Sabi sent me a text. Oh, I just wanted you to be aware. I've sent my driver over to your hotel with a box full of freshly cooked organic vegetables, stuff like that. So I didn't have to. It was instant manifestation. It was beyond like, oh, I'd like this. Let me, get more specific. Let me put my attention on it. It was instant. And it was miraculous.
And this is what I call living in the miracle zone. It's being in the flow of life. It's living where our desires are there, and just there is that spontaneous fulfillment of desire without doing a lot of efforting.
Well,
it's
here's
just
a
being
question
in the flow.
for you.
Yeah.
So was I craving the vegetables because Sabi was already preparing them for me, or did my desire cause her to go and get them? Or what Deepak would say, because I've had this conversation with him, he said it was both. And then he would explain like string theory to me or something like that. So I think it was both. I craved them because they were coming, and they were coming because some part of me wanted them.
I was actually going to ask you the same question, and I agree. I agree with Deepak. Who's not going to agree with Deepak on that subject? But I think it is simultaneous, and this is the flow of life. This is what is, I believe, meant to be when we're living in the flow of life. And Arielle, I would be remiss to not ask you, the Cupid of Consciousness and the queen of Soulmate secret, which, by the way, I was very happy to be. My relationship with Sergio is one of the stories in Soulmate Secret. And we split up for a little while, Sergio and I, for a few years. And Arielle kept saying, no, you're going to get back together. I said, no, Arielle, you've got to take our story out of the book. She said, no, you're going to get back together. And so, sure enough, we did. And we got back to we've already been back together for 10 years or more. So I would love for you to share with us, because you've so much helped me in healing my relationship and using Wabi, Sabi love and Soulmate secrets. How do people shift their relationships to be more in the miraculous? And this is both for people who are already in a primary relationship, or for those who are really wanting to draw in their soulmate, or for those just in general in any of their friendships. How do we do that?
There's a bunch of stuff involved in there. So the first one is, I believe we're all personally responsible for our own happiness. If you're looking to your mate to supply your happiness, you won't ever be happy. You need to first be happy and be willing to be unhappy when you are, but know that you're at your core, you're responsible for your own happiness. And then, of course, you have to learn good, clear communication. It's not your partner's job to psychically know everything you want, or even provide everything that you want. So many people think, well, if he really loved me or she really loved me, they would do such and such. No, that's nonsense. It's really more about mutual respect. Like, he likes to do that. I like to do this. I'll go do this with, Marci and Claire, and he can go do this with Sergio and Craig. And you don't have to be together all the time. And then you also really, we had this conversation this weekend. You have to choose your best friend wisely. If you're choosing somebody based on feelings, like, oh my God, I'm so in love and I've never felt like this before, and there's champagne bubbles going through if that's how you're choosing a partner, you're doomed for failure. because the state of being in love, or what we call being in love, is nature's greatest drug high. It's your brain on drugs. It has nothing to do with real mature adult love. It's how nature gets us to procreate. We're like, oh, you're my partner. I've known you so many lifetimes. Let's have babies. And then you're stuck together. So understanding the state of being in love, or what I like to call the socially acceptable form of insanity, is not the way to choose a partner. You want to choose a partner on 5 things. You need connection, compatibility, communication, which must be learned, because I don't know anybody who came into a relationship knowing how to be a good communicator. Some chemistry, although sexual chemistry is actually the least important factor in a successful long-term relationship, which surprises a lot of people. They think that's so important. But ultimately, you need some chemistry, but it doesn't if it's to the moon kind of chemistry, that's kind of a red flag. The single most important glue is a shared vision for the future. Okay, this is what's important to me. I want to live and look at the ocean. I want to live in the mountains. I need to be in nature. You can't have somebody who has a passport in their purse at all times be with an agoraphobic. It's not going to work. So the shared vision for the future is the most important. Doesn't mean you have to share everything together. Like imagine, like I don't meditate for lots of reasons. I do other things. I do heart math, but I don't meditate, even though I have been given mantras by some of the biggest people on the planet. Brian's a meditator. Imagine if Brian had said, oh, I can only marry somebody who's a meditator. We would have never been together. So the rules that people made up, oh, I have to have somebody who does this. You don't actually know what you need, because what happens, no matter how long your soulmate wish list is, you're going to get stuff you never asked for that turns out to be the greatest gift that you didn't know that you needed.
And that was such a big piece for me. I love all 5 of those things, and I'm glad to say Sergio and I have them, and communication we continue to work on all the time. But one of the things that you really helped me with is understanding loving the imperfections, the Wabi Sabi love piece, and how to appreciate even that. Maybe you could speak for just a moment on that.
Sure. So Wabi Sabi is a Japanese aesthetic that honors all things old, worn, imperfect, and impermanent. And it seeks to find beauty and perfection in imperfection. So I'm imperfect, you're imperfect. We both know how imperfect we are. But we have to find somebody who's going to love all our quirks and nuttiness and neurosis and weirdness, and understand that everybody's got this mishigosh. We just do. And you're not going to change it. It generally in every relationship, and this is sort of the big secret people don't know, there's usually an on-time person and a late person. There's a hot person and a cold person. There's a person who wants sex twice a day. One wants it once a month. There's somebody who's always late and on time. I mean, there's all these dichotomies, and that's normal. That's normal. And then you have to find ways to find the perfection in it. I'll give you a quick story about this. It's a really stupid one, but I like it. So imagine that this is a tube of toothpaste. Now, I remember I would go into the bathroom and I would see my tube of toothpaste.
And just so you know, Arielle is holding up a eyeglasses case.
Yeah, eyeglass case, right? And I'm squishing it really hard from the middle. And I would see that my tube of toothpaste was scrunched from the middle. And Brian had done that. So I'd bring him in the bathroom and say, honey, let me show you the correct way to get toothpaste out of a tube. You start at the bottom and you squeeze it going up, and then you slowly roll it. And then at the end, it's nice and neat and all the toothpaste out of it. And he would look at me like I was crazy, and he would walk out of the bathroom. Well, this went on for quite a while. He was always, killing the tube of toothpaste. And I started to think, well, what's the solution to this? Because it bothered me. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, it made me not like him when I saw what he did to the toothpaste. So I thought, okay, I'll get 2 tubes of toothpaste. They'll be his and hers. But then I realized it would still bother me when I saw his. And then I started to think, well, what would be the Wabi Sabi solution to this? And I held the toothpaste in the palm of my hand and I said, okay, toothpaste, what's good about you? And the toothpaste spoke to me and it said, thank God he brushes his teeth.
Ah, great.
And from that day on, because even today he still does that. But
Right.
now every time I see the mangled tube of toothpaste, I smile. Oh, Brian brushed his teeth again. He'll still have teeth when we get old together. So that's Wabi Sabi love.
That is
reframing.
Love that reframing. And, you know, when you say that it's about loving the imperfections, we need to love the imperfections in each other, be with people who love our imperfections. Yes. Ultimately, it starts with us loving our own imperfections. You know, I think that it's important to not expect the other person or anybody else, whether you're in a relationship or, you know, primary relationship or not. It's not about expecting them to love our imperfections before we actually have enough self-compassion and self-acceptance that we love our own. I think
the other thing people need to understand, especially people in the personal growth world, they go to workshops and they read books and they take online courses with this gigantic expectation that they're going to get better. Now, they don't actually, I don't believe we heal our core wounds ever. I think we all die with our core wounds. But what those courses and books sometimes help with is we find ways to mitigate the pain or to get a little bit better at what it is so that we're not as plugged in as we once were. But I think holding the expectation that someday I'm not going to have X or whatever it is, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So you have to be kind to yourself, which is why you need a spiritual toolkit. So like I was doing it this morning, I was feeling anxious about something that in reality, it does not make sense for me to feel anxiety about the thing that was bothering me. It's just a made up story, but it's my made up story that I've had for my whole life. And it was my grandmother's made up story. So it's in my DNA, and I'm Jewish. So it's in the 6,000 years of Judaism. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yes, you do. We come in with this crazy stuff and then we don't want to have it and we try and fix it. So that's why I'm a big believer in having a spiritual toolkit. We need lots and lots of ways, and we need friends that you can call up and say, listen, I need to rant for 5 minutes. You know, this happened and I know it's not rational, but it's driving me crazy. And you need somebody who will just listen and say, yes, that's true. Yes, you feel like that. Is there anything else you need to say about it? You know, can I tap you through it? You know, can I take you through a heart lock-in through it so that you're not driving yourself crazy?
And that's really, you just summed up where the work is. It's in actually doing the work to come to a greater place of self-compassion and self-acceptance. And thank God I have friends like you, Arielle. Thank God for you.
And that's why people need community. You know, you need, even if it's one person or it's 5,000 people, we need safe places to be crazy.
Yes. And you're offering something coming up, Arielle, that I'm so excited about. It's an event on healing your heart and soul from betrayal. It's a 2-hour recovery clinic on Zoom. And it's really about shifting from that trauma. So will you tell us a little bit about this and why you're doing this event?
Yeah. So when the book was released June 27th, just less than 2 months ago, I started getting emails and calls from readers saying, and they were whispering, Arielle, you wrote this book for me. I've had that experience. I've been with a toxic narcissist. And it's like, now, what did you say your name is again? I did not write this book for them, you know, and yet it resonates with anybody who's ever been in a relationship with a toxic narcissist. They feel like somebody put on the page the experience and the emotion and the rage and the grief that they've been through. So I thought, well, I have friends that are experts. I'm going to put together this Zoom course so that you can really understand what the healing steps are to getting over the trauma, the emotional trauma of having been betrayed. So that's the purpose of it, and it's free.
And it's free. And it's for anyone who's felt like they have been heartbroken in some way, cheated on, or any kind of heartbreak. So I'm so happy for this event. So to get to the event, you would go to arielleford.com/heal. We'll have that in the show notes as well. So Arielle Ford, ARIELLE Ford, FORD.com/heal. And I'm so looking forward to that. And Arielle, for people to find out more about the book itself, The Love Thief, they can just go to thelovethief.com. Is that right?
Right. Yes. And if you buy the book at the site, and it'll give you choices, you can go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any of that. There's a bonus on that site. And what I did was I asked 8 of the world's top yoga teachers, and I gave each of them an emotion to then do a video on the yoga philosophy around grief or anger or heartbreak, and then yoga poses to heal that. So that's all free and downloadable when you go to thelovethief.com.
What a phenomenal gift that you're giving with that. I mean, I know you have Sean Korn is doing one of those, and you've got some great yoga experts to deal physically with those experiences of grief or anger or jealousy or whatever. So, well, Arielle, as always, it's wonderful to get to have a conversation with you. I could sit with you for hours and hours and hours, and we often do, and get to have conversations about this and about life. And is there anything that you'd like to say in closing before I end with a quote by you?
The only thing I like to remind people about these days is that there's no shortage of love in the world. People are living like, I can't find somebody. And there's 8.2 billion people alive and half of them are single. There is no shortage of love in the world.
And with that, I will close with a brilliant quote that really speaks to that, which is, the happier we are. This is a quote by Arielle. The happier we are, the more easily we draw to us everything we want. Every moment of every day, we're sending out energetic signals that are felt by the people around us. And this explains why a desperate person draws to himself or herself more desperation, while a person who is already fulfilled becomes a magnet for greater fulfillment. So may we all be fulfilled inside, and through that be magnets for greater fulfillment and be beacons of fulfillment on this planet. So thank you, Arielle.
Thank you, Marci. This is really fun.
Really fun. And I want to thank everyone today for listening to this. I hope that you are feeling uplifted and inspired and more in the miracle zone after our time together. And if you enjoyed this episode, we so appreciate your 5-star ratings and your reviews. And of course, share the Miracle Zone love with your friends and family. And if you are wanting to live more in the Miracle Zone, you can take a step by taking our free 2-minute quiz to find out what your miracle superpower is. So just go to miraclequiz.com to find out your miracle superpower. And remember that your life of miracles is waiting for you. It is your birthright. And simply by listening to this podcast, you are taking a step forward into the Miracle Zone. Enjoy.